This is Joe Ribello, and welcome to Martial Arts Today Television. We have a very special guest this month's episode, and we're here with Mr. Rich Hale from California. Rich, it's a pleasure having you on our program. The first question I always ask all my interviewees is, how did you begin in the martial arts?
Actually, I started in judo when I was 16 years old, and I made the mistake of kicking my instructor between the legs. I was looking for karate, and they said, you don't do this. I paid for months for that, and asked, well, where can I hit and kick people? And they said, that's karate. And it was then only after I moved to California from Alaska in 1970, 2 years later, I found a karate school, and that's what I started.
Well, who was your first instructor back then in the art of Kenpo?
Rich Callahan.
Now, where was this in California, by the way?
Colton. It was an Ed Parker-owned school. It was a company-owned school of Ed Parker's, and he hired Rich to run it, and Huck Planis would come in and teach everybody, or teach Rich, actually, the material, because Rich was not a Kenpo black belt at the time. He was learning it right before we did, much quicker and more efficiently than we did. And I was there for about 4 years before I moved back up to Alaska again.
Wow. Now, whereabouts in Alaska were you located when you moved back?
Anchorage.
Now, you had gotten your black belt from Mr. Callahan at that time?
Not at that time. I was a brown belt. And I went to Alaska, and after a couple years, maybe, I decided to open my school as a brown belt.
Okay. Now, obviously you eventually went to black belt. How did that all come about? How did you become a black belt?
The first black belt I was given was by A.C. Rainey. A.C. Rainey is an incredible black belt that walked into my school one day, and we were talking, and he was a black belt. And I called Mr. Parker while he was there, and we all talked together for a while, and by the end of the day, he was the new head instructor of my school. And sometime after that, I earned my black belt under AC.
Now, there's a great story that you tell that I love about it. When you had that phone call, his question to you was what? Who was the...
Oh, the head instructor?
Right.
Okay, well, I'll have the very quick version of that. Was when AC came in, he told me he was a black belt in Ed Parker's Kenpo. And I said, you know Mr. Parker? And he said, oh, absolutely. And I said, great, please, sir, come into my office. We sat down. I said, tell me about yourself. And as he started to talk, I reached for the phone, and I started dialing. And he looked at me like I was a little bit rude, but I said, please, I got to make this phone call. Just keep talking. Mr. Parker answered. Mr. Parker, hi, Rich Hale. Hey, sir, yes, sir, great. I got a guy in my office. His name is AC. Yes, sir. So he wants to talk to you. So AC was talking to him, apologizing for being out of touch, and yes, sir, and no, sir, and I'm sorry, sir. And then he handed me the phone back, and Mr. Parker was gone. I sat it down, and AC said, don't you ever do that to me again. I said, apparently I won't have to. And he's still fidgeting, and he's going, so who's your head instructor? I said, you are. So it was a great start. And to this day, I was on the phone with him just a couple days ago. Great dear friend, great instructor, great martial artist.
Excellent. For our general public, AC Rainey is a well-known Kenpo black belt through the Ed Parker system. I'm very privileged to talk to another student in the past, Mr. Todd Durgan, and through Tiger Dragon Kenpo, and he was the person who really introduced me to Mr. Rainey in regards to his lineage and his knowledge base, and a person who has a lot of on-the-job experience being a law enforcement officer for many years. And it really was a pleasure recently finally getting to meet him, and being able to meet the man behind the stories. That's the key. Now, another important aspect was in your career, you've since gone on, after you were training with AC Rainey, you returned to California, and you were studying at the Pasadena studio at one time, or West Los Angeles?
More West Los Angeles, yeah.
Now, obviously, throughout your training, who were the people that you're working with in California? And part of that question is, how did you get to become a student directly of Ed Parker?
Before I met Mr. Rainey, operating my school, and all of a sudden finding myself 4,000 miles from my instructor, I realized how little I actually knew. And I got very frustrated, and I decided to look up Ed Parker's phone number and call him. So one day, I called Ed Parker. He answered the phone, and I said, "Hello, Mr. Parker. My name's Rich Hale. I teach Ed Parker's Kenpo Karate in Anchorage, Alaska." He goes, "Really? Tell me about yourself." So we talked. And I said, "Now, the reason for my phone call is I don't really know what I'm doing. What do I do? What do I do next?" He said, "You get on an airplane and you come see me."
Wow.
So I went down to Pasadena. I met with Mr. Parker. I was happy to have met him, and I thought, now I'm leaving and I'm going home and it's over. As I'm leaving, he said, "Well, when are you going to be back?" And as I told you earlier, I was thinking, well, I got a bag in my car. If you got a basement, I'll move in, you know. So at that point, I started coming back and forth from Anchorage to Pasadena, maybe every 4 months, 6 months. And I did that for a while. And then when I moved to California, I got to spend more time with Mr. Parker. And never really thought of myself as a real student of Mr. Parker's as much as I was fortunate to have gotten to go to the house and have lessons and develop a relationship. And you look back on it, and I guess, yeah, probably a student. He gave me both my first and my second degree black belt, signed on both sides, you know, as president and teacher. So great experience, great and wonderful man.
For our public, when we talk about the left and right sides of the certificate, when you look at an IKK certificate, International Kenpo Karate Certificate, the big certificate, as some of the students will know, on the left side, there is the executive board of the International Kenpo Karate Association. Of course, Mr. Parker being the president, obviously his name is at the top. On the right side is signed by your individual instructor, those person who, on the recommendation of, and your instructors listed in various listings. So when Mr. Hale talks about the left and right side, not only was he listed obviously as the president of the IKK, but he was also listed as his personal instructor. Now, in relationship to your study of Kenpo, another important feature through your career was the creation of probably one of the new innovative tools for Kenpo, and that was the creation of the Kenpo Journal. How did you come into the concept of creating the Kenpo Journal in its format?
Well, originally I just needed manuals. The IKKA had since dissolved, and I had contacted and called and written, and I could not get manuals. And I didn't like having photocopied copies of copies of copies, so I typed all the techniques out. And being a database developer, I put them in a database instead of Microsoft Word or something like that. And then once I had the techniques, I thought, well, why don't I add terms? And then why don't I add sets and forms? And being a relational database, I created it in such a way that one day I was having a little bit of a discussion with a friend of mine in regard to the meaning of a term. And I felt like I knew, he felt like he knew, but the only way to really find out what it was to find that term, somewhere in all of the material, hundreds and hundreds of pages of material. So I had my manuals from the 70s, 80s, and 90s spread out all over my office floor, and I searched for days trying to find that term. Well, then I decided to create inside the database where in any one of the terms you can click on it, and it would instantaneously find that term, isolate the technique, bring it to the front, and highlight it in red. And that really created the Kenpo Journal as something more than just a place to store the material. So now everything in the system is within 3 to 4 clicks away to find any and everything that you want, as well as it has the ability to print the techniques and material. A great feature that I'd like to talk about is that one of my favorite sections is Q&A with Ed Parker. I have well over 200 magazines that have articles by and about Ed Parker. What I did was I went in and I typed out every single article into my database, then I extracted his quotes. And then most cases, it would be if it's an interview, they said, "Mr. Parker, what did you like about studying with Professor Chow?" He would answer. Other times, it's his own article, and he's saying, "What I loved about growing up in Hawaii was," I'd create the question, "What did you like about Hawaii?" So there's 400 pages of questions and answers. And to verify that I didn't make anything up, which people could think I might, at the bottom of every single quote has the magazine name, the volume, the issue, the title of the article, the author's name, so that if anybody questions anything that's in there, they can go back. And it's organized from the 50s all the way forward. Click on any year or just click through hundreds of pages of quotes.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's cool. It's a great part of it that I really enjoy. You learn a lot about the man by reading that particular section.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And you know, this is only just one of the many aspects that are placed in the Kenpo Journal, whether it be description of physical material being taught, elaborations upon the theories, the concepts, the principles of American Kenpo. There's also a wonderful photo album of various images of Mr. Parker over the years, including all of the major magazine covers.
A lot
that
of
he was
memorabilia,
featured.
right, all the magazine covers.
And again, memorabilia that runs the gamut from the Parker knives, the jewelry put out by the IKKA, it runs the gamut. And you know, I think the beauty of this is, as we talked about it, the format. Now, again, it's evolved. Originally, it was on a CD, and now you now offer it on
a little flash drive. It's real nice. Yeah.
And again, and what many people have to understand is that the Kenpo Journal, even now, is still evolving.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that people, just like any operating system, can get newer versions of the Kenpo Journal.
Right. The newest version that I just have out, one of the things in all of our terminology is Mr. Parker had a certain degree of redundancy in relation to terms. So what I've done is when there are terms that are synonymous in nature, instead of looking through, like if you have cover, well, cover is in C, side cover is in S, right side cover is in R, left side cover is in L. So what I've done is anytime you click on anything in relation to cover, there's a portal right here that will tell you cover, side cover, left cover, right cover. So you can get all these words together. So if it's accumulated forces and confluence of forces and any other term that means the same thing is available to you in the same area. And then below that are related terms, so you can study by entire subject matter. So instead of just looking at one word and not knowing where in that book the other words are, it kind of pulls it together in a package where you can study from it.
Excellent. Now, another important feature of your career is the formalization of the Ohana Kenpo Karate Association. And if you could explain a little bit about that.
Sure. First, Ohana is family in Hawaiian. And I did that in honor, of course, of Mr. Parker. And I almost consider mine almost the anti-association. It's very affordable to join. I don't put a lot of restrictions on people. The purpose of it is to give people a place that they can go associate with people of like mind and feelings. My ultimate goal in Kenpo is to affect some type of positive influence. I really appreciate what Mr. Parker gave, not just to all of us, to me personally. And I would like to carry on some of what he was doing in his honor. Not make great changes, not make great strides, just make sure that maybe I don't damage the art on the way through it. Leave it a little better, possibly, along the way. That's about it. Take care of the art for Mr. Parker.
Excellent. Well, on that note, thank you very much for taking time to be on our program. And we'll be back with more exciting action with Mr. Rich Hale here on Martial Arts Today Television. Stay tuned. And welcome back. We're here with our special guest, Mr. Rich Hale, and Mr. Hale is going to be demonstrating one of the main techniques in Ed Parker's American Kenpo Karate. Explain a little bit about the technique and its understandings, details, theories, concepts, and principles in the short time we have remaining. Rich, turn it over to you, sir.
Joe, okay, good buddy. What I'm going to do is thundering hammers. Thundering hammers is a technique that has a lot of motion in the upper body, and that's what people tend to see a lot. One of the things I want to emphasize is nothing is going to be effective on the upper body unless you've taken care of the lower body. I can't hit somebody who's trying to run away from me. I can't catch them necessarily. So we're going to work on trapping your legs in the midst of the technique. And then we're going to work on the principles of making sure that the hits that I'm hitting you with are as effective as I can possibly make them based on principles instead of hitting you hard and fast. So in our limited time, why don't you first, you're going to just step in. We're going to slow. You'll come in with the right. So as I come in, notice that what I didn't do is use my arm to make the strike. People get too much into the arms. I'm using my body. So when I rotate my body, the power comes through the hips. So that deflects the motion when you've come in. My next move comes into here. Now, if I hit you from there and I move, you can walk away from me and I haven't been able to effectively keep you here. So what I need to do as you attack is not worry about my hands for a moment. I need to make sure I've checked your leg, buckled your leg, and then taken it all the way down. At this point, this could really hurt. That's 200 pounds. Dropping down on top of your Achilles tendon, your toes are in the air, that can really work. So as you attack me and we put it together where I come in and I hit, and I hit, and I hit. Another thing people have a tendency to not take advantage of is full range motion. As you're coming in, they'll tend to go here. Thundering hammers was named it because thunder comes from above. Sure. So as you attack, I want to make sure that I've taken this from a nice, safe, long distance. Boom! Now this one, fray that knee, this is coming from above. I roll this down to check you into place. Boom! Now the last one's coming from above. I check you. But as I deliver my strike, I'm going to pull up slightly. So boom! I put that one in place. And then the technique can continue from there. But that pretty well takes care of it.
Excellent. Now, in regards to, again, thundering hammers, one of our major techniques in American Kenpo, the whole concept, again, I always mention about the Chinese deity for thunder and lightning. They call him thundering down on a major drum. And you beat that person like a drum when you do it.
Absolutely.
Now, we have enough time remaining that we're talking a little bit about, we talked about the theories and concepts involved in thundering hammers. And if we can go over a couple of them just to elaborate for our general public, just to educate the public and the martial arts public about what the theories and concepts involved within it.
Sure. Mostly every single technique is not designed necessarily to be effective on the street. It's more important that it's actually teaching you how to move so that no matter what you do, it's going to become effective. Now, let's say in this initial strike, after I've done my block, some people will look at this and say this is not truly an effective strike. Granted, it displaces a lot of the energy over a wider area, but what it will do, if I'm here and I'm just hitting you and you're withstanding this, that's not a problem. But if I come in and I drop my body into it, so now there's a lot more force. So I have to do it correctly in order for that to work efficiently. Later on, we can tailor our techniques. Tailoring, the simple idea behind tailoring is I can alter the timing, the target, and the weapon. So in this case, what I would most likely do in altering my weapon is I'm going to come in with a whipping heel palm to the solar plexus. You can move that. You're not afraid, are you?
You bet, no.
Okay, so as I come in, I'm going to be here. Go. So now I'm going to apply. Now here I just did the whipping heel palm. I might have said back knuckle before. It's a heel palm coming into the solar plexus. But then I'm going to apply all that body rotation. I'm going to fuse my arm to my side so it doesn't spring out and apply all of that. So now I focused everything into the solar plexus. So that move is not necessarily the move I would use, but it's a training move. It's a power developing move. And as I progress, I can alter it. It can come in again. A person might just want to come in here. So now I'm still utilizing the torque of my body. I'm still fusing it together, and I'm isolating it into a small point again. So our system will allow us to alter the techniques to be more effective based on the circumstances and our own individual abilities.
Excellent. Now, for those of you interested, again, being an internet persona, as it were, through the Kenpo Journal and your study, how can people get in touch with you online?
Oh, well, my website is ohanakenpo.com, and if that's hard to spell, it's also pacifickenpo.com.
Excellent.
As compared to Atlantic Kenpo, which somebody must have.
Thank you for so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for the greetings from the land of beatings. And this is Joe Rebello with Martial Arts Today Television. Until next time, keep training.